Welcome everybody to D&D Civil War session number 12, The Fracture, and we're going to do things a little bit different tonight. Normally we would sit down, we'd have a big discussion about everything that's going on and what our weekly schedule will be and things like that. I want to step aside from that because tonight the important thing is what's going to happen with this story. As we have a lot of players that are joining us, and things are going to be pretty interesting to get things started. So we're just going to jump right into our game. So let's check on everybody. Are you guys ready to go over here?
I am ready.
Ready.
All right. All right. So without further ado, we're jumping straight into tonight's session. And I need to open this. All right. So, way off to the north, in the city of Toledo, chaos has fallen over its citizens. A bit of unease rests upon the spirits of the people, and in the southwest of the city, Upper Toledo is flooded with these citizens all clamoring around the embassies, each of them focused around trying to get information. Unfortunately, for members of the 22, this means that the building is also flooded with people trying to get information, families gathering around the outside of the massive double doors, yet none of them able to get through the barricaded chamber doors to make their way inside. Behind these doors, on the bottom floor of the facility, the assistants' desks all remain unoccupied. Completely silent, the sounds of the citizens outside surrounding the building are echoing through the glass pane windows and reverberate throughout the chambers, which remains eerily silent other than their sounds. From the stairway to the west, you hear the sound of a gavel making contact with a block directly underneath of it, following by a resounding voice which projects from a thermatic resonator within the third floor chambers of the council. These council chambers are a massive 80 by 50 foot room, which features a beautiful sandstone wall and flooring that's offset by very stark black marble pillars, which reach from floor to the very ornately decorated 10-degree pitched ceiling above it. Banners of each of the 22 noble houses line the walls surrounding the chamber itself, all mounted onto decorative flagpoles that are scattered all around. At your feet, when you walk into this chamber, a very beautiful tapestry of various shades of tan carpets, resembling elegant floral framing around a ornate starburst-style pattern, which covers the entire floor of this chamber. At the east end of the chamber, behind a podium, rests a very large window, a very beautiful view of the city, and the very ominous shattered sky which looms over top of it. You hear a voice call out into this chamber, "Representatives, your attention, please." Hours earlier, to the south, the sky looks as if it's been ripped apart. Brilliant blue streaks that can only be described as lightning radiating over the praetorial peaks. A chilling aura radiates from its core, an almost unnatural coloration which illuminates the morning skyline that suddenly grows darker. A crispness hangs over the air as the wind begins to howl and whip through the caverns of Volndar's hold. For Celeste, an incredible dilemma weighs upon her heart and mind. She shouts out to the party, her voice reverberating against the stone passages into this massive cavern, which the party still remained. Upon hearing her calls, they quickly rush through the caverns and make their way outside, one by one, their eyes fixating upon the shattered skyline which hovers over the city of Toledo. Even for a man of the cloth such as Freddy, what he is seeing felt almost surreal. Immediately, the mood shifts drastically. The adventurers stepping out, taking a look at this, almost felt like a punch in the gut to them. Nothing felt right. Nothing felt okay. Freddy, as you look around, you notice that all of your companions are almost in shock, struck by awe, and none of them seem to know what to do next. Behind you, you watch as Sheris climbs out of the tunnels and proceeds straight to the airship and continues to tinker, grabbing some of his exploration equipment and backpacks and things of that nature. He stops, takes a look back at you, and puzzled. What are you guys doing?
I don't have no idea currently.
What do you mean?
We need to get back to Toledo immediately. Toledo.
What? No. We're here. My things are here. We're going to the tunnel. I don't know why we would go back now. We just spent a week sitting here.
Yeah, well, that was before the Skyrim.
What are you talking? And about that time, he stops and looks over his shoulder. And as he does, he sees this blue radiant streaks just spiderwebbed across the sky. And he kind of stops for a second and pauses. And then he looks back at the group. It's about this time that Vivian begins to feel something very familiar to her. This mental pull that she has felt many times before. Something very similar to what she experienced in the Hall of Remembrance. Back in the city of Toledo, the representatives find themselves gathered together for an emergency meeting, brought on by this very skyline. Across the floor, 22 sandstone daises, roughly 10 foot by 8 foot in size, are filled to the brim with members of each of the representatives' entourage, along with dozens of members of the Warning Guild scattered all across the room to protect them. A small 2 foot tall wall surrounds each one of these daises, with a rostrum made of black marble in the front center of each one of them. Standing at the front of the chamber on a half oval podium, Gilly Gladomain brings the chamber to order for her sister, Queen Mariel, to preside over the session. We officially bring this emergency session to order. Queen Mariel will have the floor for the opening statement, followed by floor discussions. She bangs the gavel onto the podium and then steps aside, allowing Mariel to step forward. As Mariel steps forward, she looks around the room, greeted by very nervous looks from the representatives. Each of them seem to be tending to their smaller groups, all of whom are carrying on their own discussions. Mariel clears her throat a bit, adjusts the sleeves of her armor, and then, with a short pause, closes her eyes for just a second, then places both of her hands upon the green emerald built into the podium and begins to speak, her voice transmitted through resonators placed all throughout each of the daises around the chamber. I know that your people, our people, are frightened. There are so many questions to ask, and only so many answers that we can give. Scene switches back. Vivian, do you accept this call?
Yes, I.
Vivian, you begin to feel yourself falling back into a trance, your eyes closing and then suddenly reopening to find yourself back within the domain of the Ascended. You feel a weightlessness. The world around you fades, your senses dull, but for a brief moment. Lightning flashes all around you as your eyes open abruptly, fixating upon the sky, the sound almost deafening as it pierces the thin atmosphere around you. Your eyes adjust as you find yourself standing within a small 25 by 25 foot chamber that lacks definition or refinement. Plain wooden tables, bookshelves, and a couple of chairs fill this chamber, which has been closed off behind a massive blackwood door. In the back corner, near the furthest point of the chamber, a 2 foot by 2 foot golden brazier, unlit, with a golden coated dragon skull and red rubies rests around it. As you stop and take a look around the chambers, your eyes adjust to this new environment. And standing in front of you, his hands laying upon the tabletop, leaning forward, reading the book that is resting on the table, is Kai Gladomain. The hood of his cloak pulled back, allowing you to see his face from the side. Well, I never could have expected this. What with the Warforged and the looming threat of the Lich Queen herself upon the doorsteps of the city, you and your friends have chosen to leave. The nobles I would have understood, but you? Well, I have to say I'm a bit surprised. It would seem that you are the only individual willing to accept my call. I suppose that's something positive. Much like your mother.
What about my mom?
Well, she was willing to work with me from the beginning when she first arrived on the Isles. Thankfully for me, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
I thought the story was that my mom and her friends killed you.
She left out the entire part where she was willing to work with me at the beginning, didn't she?
She never told me anything about the Isles.
Of course she didn't. Why would she give you information that may sway your opinion? I mean, you do seem impressionable enough.
Thanks?
Don't worry, it's not a bad thing. Vivian, Kalido is in trouble. As I'm sure you have noticed, there's an anomaly which hangs over the city. Its fingers extend to the edges of the city. Its focal point hangs directly over Shea Kovedai, the home of the Undying Court. This is the most troubling part for me because, well, I simply do not have answers for it. Greed, wrath, envy, part of the human condition and can easily be explained away. Even the Lich Queen's motives I can understand, but this is something far more. Panic has already begun to set in, and the 22 have called for an emergency session in an attempt to sort all of this out.
What? So you don't know what is going on in the sky right now?
If I did, I probably wouldn't have had to contact you about this. Something feels odd. This is unnatural. Nothing has the power to do what I am seeing here.
It's not the Lich Queen?
She wishes that she had the power to do such things.
What should we do?
With that, the scene changes once again. In the front row, sitting quietly at dais number 20, Representative Shinara Edvaris listens intently as the queen continues to speak. She is surrounded by the city's elite, those who call Kalito Heights East their home. She is the former leader, or lead inquisitor, of the Evans Spy Syndicate. Representative Ivaris has spent the days following the fall of the Ascended making a new life for herself. With the arrival of the first dragon-marked House Farlan, arriving in the city roughly 1505, many of the ESS duties were taken over by the organization, and the rest have been absorbed into Representative Argent's newly formed Eben Company. Without much purpose, she quietly retired to her home in the city of Bria. Now, she helps to guide the city's largest and most wealthiest above-ground ward. She turns, looking over her shoulder, where a black and red scaled dragonborn sits quietly, giving an outward appearance of unease in this very social situation. Esprit, why don't you go ahead and introduce your character, please?
Well, as you said, black and red scaled, aged looking dragonborn, very reclusive, not typically tends to stay to the shadows, trying to basically stay away from prying eyes. Doesn't like any attention being drawn to himself. Standing there, intently looking around, but also still having a look of worry of being so openly in front of public eye.
And with that, she looks over to you, almost giving you a bit of a reassuring look, telling you, don't worry, you'll be safe here. We won't be here for long. We just need to understand what is going on here.
It's not that. It's just I don't like being here.
Understandable. I mean, after all, places of government aren't always the most welcoming, are they?
You could say that.
She kind of smiles at you as she says that.
Yeah, you're not wrong. That's for sure.
Don't worry, you're in safe company here, and I can assure you, she's got the right people in mind right now, kind of nodding over in the direction of Queen Mariel.
Well, let's hope she does.
As the speech continues, the Queen begins to speak on how the city plans to defend itself, pointing towards DS number 18. And actually, I can give you guys a layout. Why don't we do that? So pointing over here. The representative from Sentinel North, Mr. Taldor Demadani. The gruff, older-looking gentleman stands at the podium. Members of the Basilisk gaze standing at attention behind him, their hands resting upon a mechanical contraption that they refer to as hand cannons, sit at the ready. Standing among them, a member of the Warning Guild, a short, monastic female, wearing or acting as the eyes of the Basilisk gaze. I'm going to get that wrong all night. Dido, can you introduce your character, please?
She is a very short, golden brown skin human, long black hair in a high braid that swings down around mid-calf, long golden long sleeve shirt that bells from the elbows, and baggy, dark brown pants. Her hands and her feet are wrapped.
All right. And with that, you watch as Representative Damadani steps forward up to the podium, and Gilly Gladomain nods, pointing in the direction of the representative, saying, "The council recognizes Representative Damadani of Sentinel North." She kind of steps away once again. Taldor kind of clears his throat a bit and, "My friends, House Madani recognizes the stress that the current events have placed upon the city. In an event or an effort to better secure our people and the council, we've sent out every troop that we could spare to assist the Flaming Fist and to help Ebon Company in order to keep the peace in the city streets. We've also dispatched the Warning Guild, sending a number out to protect the 22. These individuals have been officially deployed under the care of the Flaming Fist, who will diligently defend this city to the best of their abilities. And as a token of our appreciation for all these organizations, we've decided to waive the procurement costs of these troops." Taldor stops and takes a look back at the Basilisk Guild. And give me the name of your character once again, Dido.
Leisha.
Leisha. I'm going to have to write that differently so I always remember. Looks back towards Leisha before turning back to the podium. "With the Basilisk Guild, we give you the solemn oath that we will continue to defend this city until our final breath. We encourage each and every one of you, however, to please return to your lives and allow Ebon Company and House Madani the chance to keep our people secure." As he begins to step away, Representative Avaris' concerns are obviously placed elsewhere. Knowing that she has no control over the situation, her focus remains on a very active looming threat: the rogue Warforged army that's been posing a bit of a intimidating presence upon the city. As she stops and turns back to the podium, Gilly steps forward to the podium once again, looking in the direction of Representative Avaris. "The council recognizes Representative Avaris of Kalido Heights East." Representative Avaris walks up to the podium, waiting patiently, looking around the chambers as the resounding applause begins to die down a bit. Shannara nods. "Thank you. Members of the 22, council leaders, and members of our city. I believe that while our eyes are distracted by the skies, we've lost focus of the immediate threat that House Lorandar's Warforged workers pose upon our great city. Even as we speak, they march to the southwest. They continue towards Upper Kalido. Parts of our city are entirely shut down, and blockades have been created." She stops, taking a deep breath, looking around the chambers and over her shoulder, quickly back over in the direction of Aratium. Eraturum? Eraturum. Gonna take a while to get adjusted to names. She looks over her shoulder and then quickly looks in the other direction. Another individual stands up, handing her a sheet of parchment. She takes the parchment, unfurls it, tilts her glasses down so that she can read it, and looks over the paper. By our estimations, if the trajectory and speed stays the same, the rogue Warforged will arrive in Upper Toledo within the 10-day. How is the city planning to address this issue? As this question rings out, an audible hum begins to circulate through the room. Various discussions begin to get sparked up from this very question, as everybody turns and looks in the direction of the Queen. As we go back, Kai stands now facing in the direction of Vivian, takes the book within his hands and closes it, holding it and kind of clutching it to his side. The Warforged have begun their march, the push onward to Upper Toledo. I don't have a solid understanding of these construct-like beings, but I do know that whatever is going on, something else is the cause.
What do you mean? When we were last...
You broke up, I'm sorry.
What do you mean? The last time we were there, they weren't moving.
It seems that in the 5 days that you have been here, they have begun a slow march towards Upper Toledo. I can assure you that if they're not stopped, that within the 10-day, the city will be overrun. And there isn't enough militia within the city to prevent that kind of war.
What do you want me to do?
I can tell you, there's been a bit of interference. You should speak with somebody from House Caneth. Do some investigating. Don't be surprised if you receive a bit of resistance, though. Secretive bunch they are. And then there's the religious ward, Celebrant Plaza. Everybody's up in arms, though for different reasons. After you and the others left from the city, a bit of an uprising began. It would appear that your friends' concerns for their faith was not unfounded. There's a bit of a religious war starting up. Clergy of the various faiths are, wanting to expel the Church of Kaifan from the city charter.
This is all bad news.
I wish I had good news for you, but unfortunately, there's more to come. In recent days, the members of the other faiths have begun to barricade themselves around the outside of the Starlight Temple. Archmage Althea, of the followers of Ezator, appears to be leading this charge. I also assume that you are aware of the assassin running through the streets?
Yeah, we chased him.
Yes, well, it appears that they have attempted to strike once again.
Who?
Well, from what little bit that I could pry from the others, it would appear that the assassin was foiled in an attempt to kill the youngest sister, Amriel Gladomain.
Aren't they your siblings as well?
I said thee, I didn't say that they weren't mine. At any rate, it would seem that Freddy's decision to hire the Warning Guild has paid off. Foiled by one of Madani's Warning Guild members, a monk, no less. But before he could be taken into custody, he decided to take his own life. The scene changes once again. This time, Representative Brennan Norrell, the 40-something-year-old brunette leader that unifies House Lorandar and House Oren of the Selavash Ward stands and makes her way to the podium. She looks very uneasy, attempts to clear her throat, and struggles a bit before she places her hand on the emerald at the podium. As she does, Gilly Gladomain turns and looks in her direction. The council recognizes Representative Norel of Selavash Ward. As Gilly steps away, Brennan starts to clamor on her words at the beginning, kind of flustered and struggling, and looks, kind of points over in the direction of Representative Avaris's podium and says, "I can assure you that House Lorandar came to the 22 with concerns over what we believe to be an organized strike weeks ago. In fact, just 7 days prior to this very meeting, I spoke with members of the committee and they assured me that this issue would be resolved quickly. But nobody has heard from them, any of them, in several days. We're just as concerned as you are about the incident. Even Alistair de Lorandar has directly asked the committee to check in with Representative DeCanneth, but nothing has come of any of this." As she says this, Representative Avaris kind of steps back away from the podium. She motions over to Ratium, asking him to approach. She kind of leans over in his direction, begins to whisper very quietly towards him. Gilly Gladomain steps forward, turning in the direction of Representative Aaron DeCanneth. Yeah, that's right. Aaron DeCanneth. Representative DeCanneth, would you like to address these concerns? Aaron stands very slowly, an elderly gentleman with at least a dozen members of the Fabricators Guild, all gathered around behind him. And with them, the members are speaking in very hushed tones, attempting to suggest things for Aaron to say as he reaches the podium. Amongst this group is a very young man, clutching onto a book, watching as these discussions play out. Equa, would you like to introduce your character, please?
Yeah, so he is quite young comparatively. Short-ish, with short brown, slightly tousled hair and a very, very light beard, with grey robes. And he is clutching a somewhat thick book, and is sort of looking at it and looking at what is happening at intervals.
As Aaron walks forward, again, elderly gentleman stops and takes his glasses off and places them on the podium and looks around the chambers and says, "I'm hoping that these aren't allegations against our house. We've done everything we can for this glorious city and have put people within the city of Kalido in the forefront of all of our thoughts. Since our house was split after the destruction of our headquarters in Seir, our family has strived to be part of something greater than just ourselves. We abandoned the creation forges, and we've emancipated the Warforged. We've worked with them and society tirelessly, attempting to integrate them with ease. And none... One sec. And we have done everything that we possibly could do for each one of them. But to allege that we have anything to do with the rogue actions that have been taken on by these Warforged now just flies in the face of everything we are working towards." He looks back, glancing back at each one of the guild members, who kind of shrug, like not really sure how to approach any of this. The crowd begins to rumble a bit, people all up in arms, many of which are coming to the defense of the House Caneth, but Shannara, however, isn't all that convinced. She looks over at her dragonborn friend and says, I want you to find out everything you can about Arandakaneth's involvement in the current iterations of the Warforged. If I know House Caneth as well as their past indicates, there's far more going on than they are telling us.
Consider it done.
With that, she nods. As we once again switch back, conversation slowly begins to come to a close between Kai and Vivian. Kai takes the tome, this now closed tome, and places it upon the table, then turns back, looking directly at her, stepping a few foot forward. Before you go, Vivian, I must ask, have you considered what I've offered? We didn't catch that.
I have considered it.
Just out of character, how much time do you need? I know you're driving. You're heading home.
I can finish this and then I need to go for like 15 minutes.
Okay. So, as you say, you've considered it. Kai stops and looks at you and says, well, I can only speak to you about what I offer. Your debt to Mephistopheles is not mine to clear. This is something that you'll need to address on your own. Maybe the Archdevil will care not about losing one more soul, or maybe he'll still try to stake claim at your soul, whether he gives you his blessing or not. Your situation is very unique as well, being a child of servitude to the Archdevil. Your heritage is poor decisions combined with your pact is obviously not going to make this quite as easy as we would like. Let's just hope his hatred for distraction outweighs his desire to repay you for your dissent. However,
That whole thing cut out for me.
oh no. If you want, I'll hold this until you're back at your desk.
Right, that'd be great.
Okay, let's do that.
Thank you.
Back in the city of Kalido, Mariel steps forward, saying, have we heard from the Prodesia? Silence kind of falls over the chamber, and you watch as Representative Kraybot raises his hand. Tareth Kraybot, a very tall, gray-skinned, and very lightly colored haired drow, begins to adjust his outfit, or their outfit, a bit as they step forward to the podium. Very subdued aura surrounds them and the rest of the drow community. Gilly stops and turns and looks in the direction of Representative Kraybot. The council recognizes Representative Kraybot of the Embassy of Zenrik. They cleared their throat, and I received word from my contacts at Sheriff's Exploration that the committee has ventured to the island of Misseltherm to attempt to gain access to the lost city of Onaldar. I heard from Sheriff this morning The committee has seen the fracturing, and they are prepared to leave and head back from the island this morning. From the audience, the rumblings begin. Lots of people begin to speak up. Occasional outbursts that can be made out here and there, most of which are equating to, why aren't they here now? Gilly turns and looks in the direction of Representative Argent. The council recognizes Representative Argent of the Oasis. Kasara Argent, former militia leader of the city of Bria, now represents the very nice and well-kept, almost forest-like area of the Oasis. All of this city is pretty much a giant desert, and she is the only place that has lots of trees and flowing water. As she steps forward, she grabs onto a handful of papers that she was clutching in her hand and lays them out onto the podium. She gives them a once-over, then looks down to the right, placing her finger upon the top of the sheet, and begins to read. New reports from within the city that there have been a spike in robberies, breaking and entering situations reported since the fracturing has occurred. Most of these reports come from within the trade ward, though not exclusive. We're unsure if we should chalk this up to just shock or if it's something more. She moves the paper out of the way, grabs onto the next one. We also have reports from Celebrant Plaza that many of the faiths are rising up against the Starlight Temple. They seem to believe that Kaifan has something to do with the anomaly. Takes her finger and slides the paper to the side. And the Undying Court, well, they have begun to vacate Shea Kovadai. Many are set to travel back to Shea Mordai in coming days to protect themselves. She stops for a second and pauses, the crowd getting very vocal at this point, many of which begin to shout out different things such as, "What of the Emerald Claw?" Or "Is this all true?" To which she turns, listening to all of them, and then grabs onto the next sheet of paper. Just like you, we have heard rumors, though we cannot confirm the existence of the Order of the Emerald Claw in our city. There have been a couple of men in costume, and that hardly makes for an entire order of individuals. But, more importantly, we are actively tracking the individual or individuals responsible for the handful of deaths to the various nobles in our city. But, like the robbers, we've yet to identify any of these things to be related. Slides the paper off to the side, gathers them up, and taps the paper onto the table. A bit of a long pause follows as Representative Demadani turns and looks back in the direction of Leisha. Very visible look of concern falls upon his face. "Well, what do you think, Sentinel? Do we buy into this Emerald Claw Lich Queen conspiracy?"
It may have some merit.
Right. Well, if there's going to be anything that transpires here, I think you should possibly take a look at this.
If that's what you wish, sure, sir.
Only if you're up for the task. There's a lot riding on this, after all. A very stern look kind of falls upon his face.
You know I'm up for any challenge.
And he stops and turns back to the podium. As he does, once again, Gilly speaks forward. The council recognizes Representative Demadani of Sentinel North. Taldor again clears his throat. If it pleases the council, I'd like to send one of our members of the Warning Guild to investigate this so-called Order of the Emerald Claw within the city. She was instrumental in stopping the recent attack against Representative Amriel. Kind of turns and looks over in the direction of Kasara Argent. Representative Argent, have the committee provided any intel on this scenario to the authorities? She stops and again scrambles through this stack of papers looking for everything she can. And she says, well, here it is, yeah. They were able to successfully take down 2 individuals in Emerald Claw garb, though we lost a few men in the process. We do have reports that you can look over and take into your custody. If you would like to investigate further, you'll receive full cooperation from Eben Company if you choose to do so. And with that, Taldor nods and looks back in the direction of Alicia once again, giving a bit of a confirming nod to her. What seemed like hours within her head was actually just seconds in reality, and Vivian begins to come to. The eyes of the entire group have then begun to set upon her, checking on her just to make sure she's okay. This isn't the first time that she's kind of zoned out like this. Again, as Vivian begins to retell the incidences that Kai has outlined to her, immediately Kai looks, or Sheriff looks at the group, and everybody seems pretty certain that they're heading back. Almost immediately upon hearing word that the Faiths are rising up against the Church of Kaifon, it took literal seconds for Circe to quietly stand and make her way onto the ship. In the distance, you hear she begins to gather all of her belongings and preparing for the journey back home, to which Calypso, remaining with the other party members, watches. Calypso states that there is no other option for her and her sister, that she could easily understate the importance of the church to the party on what it means to her sister, knowing full well that they understand her sister's position on the faith. For the sisters, obviously, the only option is to return back to the city. And then they will send word to Mariel that there are more pressing matters that need to be attended to for the 2 of them. Sheriff immediately looks and says, "What are you talking about? We cannot leave. Don't you understand this? Do you believe this to be a joke? Representative Krabaugh didn't spend his money to hire us to send you on a mini vacation."
We're also not about to leave. Whatever's happening in the city right now, to its own devices.
This is such a waste of my time. Why did we even come here? At least my last party had the good fate to get themselves killed within the within the chambers before I headed home.
Freddy just stares at him and just says, "Get this airship ready immediately."
It takes only a few moments, and Sheriff's very, very resistant to this idea, immediately turns and begins to prepare the airship. You can hear him almost just grumbling and just complaining under his breath the entire time. As he does so, the rest of you begin to gather your belongings and prepare yourselves to once again take off and head back to the city of Kalido once again.
And real quick,
Sure.
Who was it that was almost assassinated?
Amriel, the mother of Celeste. Yes.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
How is Celeste doing?
Uh,
Ark isn't here.
once she heard word, obviously, that there was an assassination attempt on her mother, two things entered her mind. One, is she okay? To which, thankfully, Vivian was able to relay back that, yes, she is fine. She's not harmed. She's not injured. Thankfully, the Warning Guild, and more importantly, Leisha, was able to foil this attempt. But the second part was something very meaningful to her. She reaches into her bag and pulls out the small scrolls that she had, that she was given from the assassin. If you remember correctly, these scrolls had what looked like very intricate hand-drawn pictures of very intimate settings of Celeste and her mother, Calypso and Circe, and Belvedere, all in this group, these 3 hand-drawn pictures. And she takes these pictures and hands them over to you, and immediately as she hands them to you, says, 2 of the 3. Yours is the only one left.
Freddy will just nod.
Obviously, all of this is a very heavy weight upon everybody. Celeste, who's been very solid about all of this to this point, seems kind of broken. As everybody boards upon the ship, it starts to lift off, and as the airship begins to clear the mountain range, you get a very clear panoramic view of this anomaly, this shattered sky that spreads almost across the entire area as far as the eye can see. It's intimidating. It's an incredible sight, though. From your location, directly above the island of Misseltherm, it's crystal clear. Yet, as the airship begins to get closer, it continues to seemingly grow. Once the airship reaches the shores of Lomera, you begin to grasp the magnitude of this event. Let's drop you back over here. That is where the city of Lomera is. The tendrils of this shattered sky reach now well past the city walls and start to reach to the outer edges of this village. Your eyes obviously stay focused on the sky above. All of this begins to build a bit of hesitation for Celeste. Her eyes have been glued on to this fractured sky since the moment that it dominated her sight. As the airship approaches the city, however, she stops, kind of takes a step back, and begins to focus the energy, or focus upon the energy that radiates from the core of this fracture. As she takes a look within, closing her eyes, they immediately burst open. Her body immediately tenses up, and she stumbles back slightly. She turns to the party and says, only 3 words before she begins to scramble off below deck. It's a portal. As she gathers her things, she returns topside, turning to Freddie and Vivian, saying that she has to go. All of her skills and training have led to this one moment, and after being face to face with it, she realizes that she's ill-prepared to help. She informs the party that she needs to learn more about what she has discovered if she is to help them again. Flashback just a little bit with Vivian with us once again. I'm going to retell you what he had mentioned to you about your pact. He had said, "I can only speak to what I can offer you. Your debt to Mephistopheles is not mine to clear. This is something that you will need to address on your own. Maybe the Archdevil will care not about losing just one soul, or maybe he'll still stake his claim at your soul, rather giving you his blessings or not. He also stops and says, your situation is unique. As a child of servitude to the Archdevil, your heritage's poor decisions, combined with your current pact, may not make any of this as easy as you would like. Let's just hope that his hatred for distraction outweighs his desire to repay you for your dissent."
What are you going to give me if I follow you?
Well, I do know ways that I can make all of this irrelevant. After all, know ways that can make you practically immortal. And in order for you to become his minion, your soul must be in his possession. And, well, he can't reap your soul until you have passed on from the material plane and the last breath leaves your lungs. I can teach you immortality, or at least the ability to feign it for as long as you so desire. And all I ask is for your unwavering loyalty. The choice is yours, though. Lesser of two evils and whatnot.
What about the ghosts? Can you help me with those?
The what? I'm sorry.
The ghosts, the voices and the people.
Yes. So, I may or may not have had something to do with that.
What do you mean?
Well, you have clinged to Mephistopheles for quite some time, and after he gave you your initial pact, well, he hasn't really responded to you.
Not in so many words, but he's...
That was my doing.
I'm confused. You've been helping?
I've been giving you what you need to bring you to this point, to where we are face to face, And now you can fulfill what your mother originally set out to do.
I'm having a real hard time believing you that my mom was down to serve you, because my mom's not really down to serve anyone.
Well, I don't expect you to believe me. I know that you can ask Freddy, and he might be able to give you a bit of insight on that as well.
But
I also don't require you to answer me. I know that if you set it in your heart and mind that you are going to follow through with this, you will more than likely find yourself to be scorned by Mephistopheles in some way. But if you make this decision and choose this path, I will give you all the power that I can afford. I just ask one thing.
and what's that?
Visit the Hall of Remembrance and collect my clockwork pyramid to complete your pact.
Okay. Will you tell me what to do once I have it?
Of course I will. Don't be silly.
Well, I'll see you later.
We will definitely be in touch. And with that, you begin to feel yourself fading back out and returning to the group as we had previously described. Let's see. As described by Kai, the center of this anomaly hangs directly over Sheikovadai as the airship begins to get closer. This area, known as the Silent Ward, due to its magical barrier, which encapsulates the ward in complete silence, this part of the city is very much alive, or at the very least, active, as the airship passes over it. You see a lot of people moving through the streets, small contingents of Undying soldiers gathered around even smaller groups of Undying counselors. To the Paradris sisters, their focus falls entirely upon Celebrant Plaza, though. Their eyes drawn towards the Starlight Temple and the very faint purple beam of starlight which appears to pierce through the sky of the temple's rooftop. However, the building's entrances all remain closed off. Surrounding the temple, members of Ebb & Company begin to gather as a final wall to protect the building and keep protesters from reaching the inside. As the airship lands back at Esareni Tower, it takes only but a moment before the sisters turn to each of you, saying goodbye and immediately rushing off towards the SLR to make their way towards Celebrant Plaza. Celeste also stops. She steps off of the airship, glancing back at Vivian and Freddy, saying that she will find the information that she needs before she heads off.
Freddy will tell all three of them before they leave that if they be careful to take care of themselves, and if they need anything, that they know how to reach him.
I hug each of them goodbye.
And with that, the three all run off, each rushing in their own direction, leaving the two of you standing at the tower. How would you like to proceed?
Pretty sure we need to get to Upper Pluto.
What was that? You cut out.
I'm pretty sure we just need to get to Upper Pluto as soon as possible.
I agree.
All right, so turning and heading towards the SLR, you make your way almost directly the same path that you have been many times before, heading to Government Center before hopping off and rushing your way to Upper Toledo. Let's see. Almost on cue, you watch as Mariel stands before everybody, looking around, and a lot of discussions have begun to break out between each one of the council members. And then you hear Mariel speak out amongst the crowd. Is there any additional business to take care of? And it is about this time that the doors swing back open, and the three of you within the chambers watch as 2 of the 5 members of the committee come bursting through to join the rest of you. And I need to drop that over here. As
the entire chamber room just turns and stares at us.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, as soon as you burst through these doors, kind of out of breath, you've been just hustling, trying to get here as quickly as you could. As
Pretty clanking on the way in his chain
yeah,
mail.
pretty much. Like, they're gonna hear it coming up the stairs, but there's so much discussion going on between everybody that they kind of ignore it. And then, as you burst through the door, everybody stops and looks in your direction. Mariel also stops, looking up, placing her eyes upon the 2 of you, and you can see a visible sigh of relief and then a bit of panic as she looks back in your direction. And where are the others?
They decided to go attend to their families.
Thank you.
But they're fine.
Very well. Come. What have you got to tell us?
So much.
So much. You watch as people clear out of the aisleways, allowing you to make your way up towards the front. Make your way up towards the podium, to which Mariel turns and kind of walks over towards you, and kind of leans down a little bit. And is everything okay?
I mean, no.
All right. Start from the beginning.
Can I lean into Freddy and whisper?
Yeah, you can. Actually, can you click on the little user settings thing and adjust your push to talk a little bit? Add a bit of delay to it, because it's cutting off. Should see an option for push to talk delay, and if you move it a little bit to the right, it should fix it. So you kind of lean into Freddy, I'm guessing, just kind of sharing some of the information that you, kind of refreshing his memory of everything that you had heard previous to making your way back out.
I wanted to ask him if I should leave out the whole Kai thing and maybe substitute it with Mephistopheles.
That brings up an interesting question. How much did you tell Freddy?
I told him everything except for the patron stuff.
Okay, so you told him about Kai telling you of the events that have been taking place, but that's roughly about it. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Reply, Freddy will say, probably not a bad idea in present company.
All right. So then I turn to the assembly and I'm going to tell them what Kai told me, but I'm going to say that my deity told me these things in a vision.
Okay.
So I have a question, Forge.
Sure.
Given their position, would I have overheard them talking like that? Possibly or not?
You can give me a perception check at disadvantage just because there is
Okay.
a lot of noise right now.
Okay. Is that perception?
Yep.
Okay.
Perception at disadvantage. 19. You can hear and see as Vivian kind of tugs at Freddy's shoulder and Freddy kind of leans down. You attempt to catch all of it, and you try to figure out what it is because you can't make out all of the actual audio of what she's saying, but you can see her lips moving, and you're able to catch most of it. And you watch as she says, should I leave out parts about, and then you can't make out that part of it, like who she's referring to, but you can make out that she's trying to kind of pull one over on the queen.
Okay. All right. I'll just kind of lean over to Shannara, whisper in her ear, just as quietly as I'll kind of tug her a little bit closer and just whisper ever so quietly in her ear, just like, she's not telling the whole truth.
She looks over at you and says, and nobles rarely do.
Fair enough. And then I'll lean back.
Forge, is it common knowledge that I'm a Gladomain, sort of?
Not for you, but for her it would be, because she is a member of the 22 and she watched as all of you came in. For somebody such as Leisha or Desmond, no, they wouldn't really know that. But for a representative, yes.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yep.
But I'm gonna mainly just talk to Mariel, but I'll, speak loud enough for everyone to hear me. And I tell them how my deity warned us that it's not, the Lich Queen or anything like that that's doing the fracturing.
This, as you're mentioning the Lich Queen, you hear some laughter through the chambers, as a lot of these people haven't quite bought into this idea that there's this all-powerful Lich that's attempting to take over the city.
I ignore them. And I continue. I also mention what Celeste said before she ran away, about it being a portal.
A portal, yes. So as you mention that, you watch as Mariel immediately turns to Gilly and gives this over-the-shoulder kind of motion for her to get a little closer. And you see she's kind of whispering back to her, and almost immediately you watch as Gilly starts to rush off and disappears out of the chamber as she starts heading to some place that she has been told to go to.
Ominous. I also talk about how the deity doesn't know what's going on with the Warforged, but we should look into that one family and that we should look into the religious people.
So as you say, they should look into House Caneth. Immediately, everybody within the dais of House Caneth just erupts, and everybody is up in arms about it.
I ignore them and I continue to speak. I just tell them, pretty much everything Kai told me without, letting them know it's Kai and the whole patron stuff.
When I see people start to react in such a way, up in arms, I want to see if there's anyone in particular that stands out.
I was also going to say, whenever she mentioned Decaneth, that I look over to Darren, or Aaron, I'm sorry, and do I see anything cross his face of recognition or worry or anything like that?
You watch as, for the most part, as you were paying attention to Aaron Decaneth a bit, he's an older gentleman, so he is very good at hiding emotion. But as soon as she mentions that her patron said something about House Caneth being responsible for this, you watch his almost this look of just defeat just crosses his face, and his head sinks just a little bit. All of the members of the Fabricators Guild that are standing behind him, they are super vocal about this. They are super upset. Like Desmond, you're watching as everybody that you have grown up and known for almost all of your life, all of these people are visibly upset.
Okay. I'll stay where I am, and I will just try and stare very intently at the conversation that's happening in front of me. I won't react too much at this point.
Okay.
Depending on how loud it gets too, if they start to drown out Vivian, I'll use thaumaturgy and tell people to shut up, basically.
Okay. Yeah, and they're not being vocal enough that you would have to force them to be quiet. They're carrying on a lot of conversation, and they are very upset. Like, this is obviously a slight to their house. They're not happy about it.
I'm gonna lean over to Shannara once again, just whisper in her ear. Well, I guess we have our answer about Aaron.
Well, I don't know that it would be intentional, but we do need to keep an eye on them anyways.
Understood.
I can't think of anything else that Kai told me that I can really repeat.
Okay. So as you continue to highlight, just doing some bullet point checklist stuff, going down the list saying, I was told this is obviously a problem, this is a thing. And a lot of these things, for the most part, yes, they know there's an uprising with the assassin. They know there's an issue with the fates in Celebrant Plaza. Some of the new information, though, again, highlighting or pointing out House Caneth is a big ordeal, and obviously got a lot of attention, just as pointing out the fact that the fracturing, as they are referring to it, is basically a giant portal. These two items immediately send people out. They rush back out, attempting to gather information. You watch as people immediately start leaving from within these chambers. Not all of them, but there are several groups of individuals that begin leaving and start to regroup. You watch as Tereth Kraybot and the group of the Drow representatives quickly and quietly make their way through the back door without much to do, just attempting to kind of fly under the radar and get out of here. Some of the lesser known groups are still present just because they're wanting to make sure their voices are heard and people are able to pay attention to them while they're still here.
Actual like members of each of the council.
Yeah. So like individuals such as Rain. Rain takes care of. I gotta pull up my notes here because I don't have everything in front of me. Rain takes care of the individuals in this ward. 14 is Moon's Call, which I could take you to the map here. Over here. And Moon's Call is this area. Now, Moon's Call is basically an area for shifters. Individuals are kind of like lycanthropes. They could take different forms, but they are basically humans that can shift into other races or take on the form of a specific type of animal.
Is it Rain?
The guy's name, yes, is Rain. He is the representative for that ward.
He's just a standard human currently. So
Yeah. Some of them, and there are several of them that they generally what happens in the council, and especially now that all of you are sitting here and you're able to see it actually in motion, because you guys haven't to this point experienced how the council actually interacts. What generally transpires here are the major houses, the very large, the members of the Gladomain, the all of the dragon marked houses. All of those type individuals are the ones that seem to have the most weight. Like the things that they say matter more than some of the smaller families and smaller wards within the city. So somebody like Kadvash, for instance, he has almost no say. The things that he mentions kind of gets overlooked because his family is not noble born by birth. They came across wealth and they were able to establish themselves here, but they don't have the kind of voice that these other houses do. So what they often tend to do is when the bigger noble houses leave, they stick around to try to finally get the attention of the queen and the other council members to try to basically get other people to join their cause.
The new money versus the old money.
Correct.
I would like to just make note of which of the council in particular leaves versus those.
So you watch the Gladomain, obviously, they stick around through the entire thing. You do watch as the representatives from the Undying Council, they leave. You watch as Renan Norel also leaves. A lot of the group from Decaneth is left, though some of them are still sticking around because obviously there are some sore topics that were mentioned by them. Kraybot is gone. Mylela Balroris has left. Argent has left. Belvedere has stuck around. Rain has stuck around. Sharon Lorsana has left. Kalnor has left. Tratton has left. Most of Madani is still there because their men are still taking care of security within the facility. Vosh is there. Adveris is still there. Brenelis has left, and Kalina has left. So you're all hanging around. Most of the discussions, some of them are sticking within the dioceses themselves. Some of the individuals are starting to mingle between one another. Obviously, Shannara begins to mingle a bit with the Gladomain, going a long way back with all of them. What would you, as individuals, like to do to proceed?
First, I lean over to Freddie and I say, "Man, I can clear out a room."
That's not actually. It's a pretty useful skill in some ways.
Not wrong.
Nope.
Freddie would want to see how Belvedere is doing, like how if he looks all right.
Yeah. Belvedere way over in this back corner over here. He looks okay. Several members of House Madani filling the ranks here, acting as new members of the Flaming Fist. Pretty nice looking group that they have begun to assemble with the help of Madani, but yeah, he seems up in spirits, especially now that the city is starting to look favorably upon them because of their protection to the people here.
If I catch his eyes, I want to just give him a nod and a smile. Try to relay to him that I'm doing all right.
Yep. And he takes notice of you, and kind of gives you the same kind of knowing nod, and then again starts to turn. You watch as Taldor turns and steps off the dais and makes his way over to where Belvedere is. The two of them having a very active conversation between the two of them, very lively, very spirited. They all seem to be in good spirits between the two of them, despite everything that is going on in the city right now.
I'd also like to turn to Mariel and just until a request that if we can get a private conversation and bring in both Belvedere and Taldor.
Okay. As you mentioned this, Mariel nods, and you watch as she kind of walks over to the podium and again placing her hand on the emerald on top of the podium, and Representative Jehoshaphat and Demadani, can you join us, please? You watch as the two of them kind of stop their conversation, look over in the direction of the queen, and give just a silent knowing nod before they kind of both go their separate ways. The two of them greeting the individuals within the dais that they were standing on before approaching the podium.
I can't remember, but after we got the scrolls of the drawings, like I don't think we've shared that with anyone outside of the party.
Nope. You certainly have not.
Well, once we get them all together, Freddy is going to pull the scrolls out and explain how we came across them at the time. Fortunately, he didn't necessarily think a whole lot about it, but after the events currently, that it's realize that it's not the right choice and it's something that needs to be taken care of.
Okay. So you hand the scrolls over, and she looks at them. Again, very intimate settings. Like, a person would only be able to come up with pictures like this that are as accurate as this if they had access to these specific chambers, because they wouldn't know, the detail of items and how things are in these certain scenarios without having that kind of knowledge. As she looks them over, obvious concern, especially with the first two, seeing the sisters in the Starlight Temple, and also seeing Amriel and her daughter, Celeste. Seeing those draws a lot of attention towards Belvedere, as he is the third and final one not included in this, as far as bad things happening to them. You watch as Mariel kind of looks up where she stands holding these scrolls, and looks up in the direction of Shannara Advaris. Kind of gives, she kind of holds her hand up and motions for the representative to join her. Down to the south, Alicia, you watch as most of the Madani individuals have begun to file out. The members of the Basilisk Gaze have already left, many of them following some of the nobles out of the chambers, leaving it to pretty much just you and Taldor here from that podium.
Seeing as everybody's starting to leave, I would start to approach Taldor.
Okay. He acknowledges you joining him. What is it, Representative? Or, what is it, Sentinel?
I may need more information on the Lich Queen and Emerald Claw before I can go forward.
Right, well, they're going to be the ones to have it. I don't have that information on myself, except for these. And he hands you over the documents that were dropped off by Kasara Argent as she stepped out of the chambers. These documents, as you kind of flip through them, you notice it's basically like a police case, detailing everything that was described to them, or described to Eben Company about the Emerald Claw. It gives you a location. It gives you a rundown of basically what they were told by the individuals that stayed behind, and indicates that the case is still open, though they don't currently have anybody working on the case. But you do watch as he starts to step away and makes his way over to where the rest of the group is, to join in the discussion with Freddy and Belvedere, kind of welcoming you to join.
Uh,
Desmond.
Yes.
What are you doing at this time?
Seeing everyone collect together, how high is the ceiling?
The ceiling extends about 30 feet in the air, and it has a bit of a pitch to it. So, like, this end of the building is about 10 degrees lower than this end.
Mm-hmm. Are there any, like, beams that support beams that come across?
There are only two main beams that go across, and each one about where these or not that one, this one down here, where these columns extend. They're kind of built into it, and they're used basically as separators. And this is a very decorative looking ceiling, so it almost looks like just a piece of artwork in each section.
Okay. So what I will do is I will snap my fingers and I will summon my raven 30 feet above me in the ceiling, and I will instruct it to try and perch itself around over here as close as it can get to the collection of people that are there. And I will open my book and put my head down and pretend to read as best as I can, and I will go into the raven and see if I can determine what is being said by the rest of the group that's there.
All right. So collectively, everybody gathers around over here. Discussions beginning to open up between the group of you. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take us a short little 5 to 10 minute break. Let everybody get situated now that we have done a full recap of everything that has transpired and gotten everybody up to speed.
Yay!
And the party's all in the same room.
And the party is in the same room. All right, so yeah, let's shoot for 5, but I'm probably gonna push it to 10. So
Okay.
give us a little bit of time. Let everybody stretch and get situated for the rest of the night here.
Sounds cute.
All right, guys. So you heard me and me talking to the party here, and we're going to go ahead and take us a short break. And then when we get back, we're going to figure out how they want to proceed, what they want to do, and kind of see where this goes, because at this point, it is all up to them. So stick around. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in about 5 to 10 minutes and get this thing underway. All right, guys. Are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah. Alrighty. So, the group begins to gather around, hanging out in front of the podium. Mariel calling upon Shannara Advaris to step forward and join in this discussion. We watched as Belvedere and Taldor both walked forward, with Leisha following behind Taldor. Most of the Flaming Fist individuals or former members of the Madani militia have been dismissed and head back, along with all of the members of the Basilisk Gaze, each of them heading back as well. Most of the chambers are starting to slowly empty out one by one as the individuals are getting their points across and voicing their concerns, slowly leaving the chambers down to just a handful of groups that remained. In the chambers, still at this point, we do have both of the Gladomain representatives. We still have members of House Caneth, members of House Madani, or a member of House Madani, and our new adventurer. Members of Miss... trying to think. There was one other group that was still here. I gotta check my notes. Most of Argent's groups left. Belvedere's group. Some of them are still there. A handful still remaining. All of Advaris's group is still there. So everybody begins to gather at the podium now. At this point,
I have a question.
sure, go ahead.
Is Aaron still here, or did he leave?
Yeah, Aaron's still there. Most of them are still having discussions within Dias 8.
Okay. I'm going to go over and try and see if I can pull him to the side.
Okay.
A little bit away from everybody.
All right. You make your way easily. Obviously, there's nobody contesting you to get over there to them. They feel this is a pretty safe space. They don't have to worry too much about the things that are going to transpire here. You make your way over towards Dias 8, to which you do see members of the Fabricators Guild all turning and kind of looking and watching as you approach, though none of them commenting or saying anything to you.
Okay. Is Aaron facing me, or is he facing away?
Oh, no, he's facing away. He's been wrapped up in discussions with the Fabricators Guild about what is transpiring here in the city with the Warforged and how they might be able to help solve the issue.
Okay. I'm gonna go up and just tap him on the shoulder.
Yeah, kind of walk forward. He's so the daises are roughly about 2 foot off the ground. So you kind of reach up a little bit and give him a bit of a tap, to which doesn't seem startled. He just kind of turns his head and looks over his shoulder, acknowledging that you're there, puts up a finger, telling you to wait. He continues his conversation for just a couple of minutes, and then he stops, straightening his robe a little bit as he turns and looks in your direction. And yes, how can I help you?
Well, Representative, I didn't know if I could maybe borrow a minute of your time, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, you have my attention. What is it that you have on your mind, son?
Well, would you mind talking with me a little bit more privately for just a second? Don't have to go far, just away from prying eyes.
As you say that, he kind of looks over his shoulder, and everybody's kind of skittish, but he kind of nods and says, very well, but we're not going to go far. And he kind of motions to kind of move over towards DS9 here. So 2 of you kind of group over here and have the conversation. Okay.
I'm going to be hushed tone, obviously, but I'm just going to lean into him and just be like, I feel bad for the remarks had against your faction.
Well, you must understand. I understand their concern, but this isn't the first time that we have been approached by such undeserved ire by the members of the council.
Well, I can't help but... Well, I mean, as you saw, I was pretty close to the conversation that they had with Miss Gladomain up front. And, well, let's just say that one that was speaking about her deity, not quite sure as to the true nature of that information. Seemed that she was leading on the assembly as to what actually transpired.
I see. You believe she's trying to twist the opinions of the council?
Indeed.
That is a very interesting predicament to have. I can assure you, whatever it is, we have done our due diligence to make sure that all of this with the Warforged is not our doing. So if you believe there is a bit of slander at play, then perhaps we should investigate a bit more.
All I did was I just wanted to inform. And then I'll
Hmm.
nod, kind of half bow, and retreat back to the dais that I was at.
As you kind of lower your head and bow, you watch as he kind of nods his head and then reaches his hand out and he says, "I'm sorry, young man. I didn't get your name."
I'll extend my hand and just Eraturum.
Eraturum. Interesting. Are you from these parts?
Born here, traveled for a decent while, but my lady over there called me back. So,
Yes, I see you do keep good company.
indeed.
Miss Advarus is good. She will treat you well, and it is good. If she has brought you back into the city, then she believes you are fit to be here. And as of right now, I tend to agree with her. Thank you again for this information. We will use it in the way we see fit.
Of course.
And kind of with that, he bows his head towards you, allowing you to kind of step away from the group. And as you do, he doesn't move quite yet, and you watch as a couple members of the Fabricators Guild come over and begin to kind of speak in his ear, try to get information from him, and you watch as he kind of turns his head and whispers a few things before slowly turning back and making his way back to the dais.
Okay.
Up at the front up here, Advarus, everybody is now gathered, hanging out here at the front of the podium. Slowly, one by one, Mariel takes this checklist of items, and she basically just goes back over them because everything felt very rushed. When Vivian and Freddie entered the chambers, they had all of this information they wanted to get out there, and they tell everybody, and then it was just like, okay, we feel like we're missing something. Let's take a step back and figure it out. So Mariel turns, looking in the direction of Vivian and Freddie, and says, "All right, where do we begin?"
What do you mean, where do we begin? I told you everything I knew.
Yes, you gave us all the information all at once and told us these things are what you were told by your deity. I need to know where we begin. Where do you want to go with this?
Well, I mean, I have an errand to run.
What can be more important than taking care of the needs of the city?
I mean, I didn't mean right this second, but...
but it did sound like you meant right this second.
I mean, I feel like I don't have a lot to add to these types of things. I'm not, super smart with all this stuff.
Give me a deception check. What are you not telling me, Vivian?
I just want to talk to someone. And I just feel like I don't have a lot to add to this type of thing. I'm not from here.
I just go give Vivian a look. And look back to Mariel and then back to Vivian. Just, I think you're alright. With full disclosure in this instance.
You watch as Mariel kind of just looks at you. Almost like this knowing I sense there's more going on, and there's something you're not telling me. But she kind of nods at you, a very slow nod before turning her head and looking over at Freddy. Very well. Then how do you think we proceed?
Is she talking to me?
No, to Freddy.
How much do we know about the the crack in the sky?
Well, based on the information that Vivian has gathered, or Celeste has gathered, rather, Vivian has told to us, Celeste believes that it is a portal, and, well, to be honest with you, I'm likely to believe that. Celeste is good at what she does, though she may not feel that she is fully capable of handling all of this. She knows the planes better than all of us. She's been very attuned to them since she has been born. Perhaps it's just because she was born in a realm where various planes of existence all intersect them. But either way, this seems like a credible thing. If this is a portal, I would like to know where it goes to.
I agree.
I have sent Gilly off to speak to a few of the members of our council, individuals that we speak to, giving us a better understanding of the realm and things that we don't quite understand. We've also asked her to speak with other members of the Undying Council. Perhaps they have better experience with this, and considering that this all originates over their ward of the city, I'm sure they will take a keen interest in what is going on.
What about the situation at the Church of Kaifan? Where exactly did it start? With the people trying to pinpoint on them?
Well, I've caught rumors of this for some time now. The followers of Ezator are not happy with the process, the way that individuals of the Church of Kaifan handle their faith. To be quite honest with you, it scares a lot of people. It doesn't make them want to join or visit Celebrant Plaza at all. And to be honest, after everything that Pandora did to the realm and all of the havoc that she created, I can, to be fully honest with you, understand their concern and reservation about this.
Well, this goes without saying. They've also have helped a lot, and I feel like this deserving of at least some consideration.
Yes, but you know how religious fanatics are. Once they get their minds set upon one thing, it's hard to change that way of thinking. Unfortunately for them, they believe that the Church of Kaifan is the cause of this, of the shattering, kind of pointing back through the window, back behind her that overlooks the city. And you see, from your point of view looking out over the city, you see the very faint purple beam of starlight that shoots up from the center of the tower into the sky. And then, of course, directly in front of it, this kind of the pinpoint of the shattered sky itself. She kind of looks back and then looks over at you and says, "To be quite fair, if I was one to believe conspiracy theories, I might believe this one as well."
It definitely doesn't look good, but I can't believe that it's their fault.
Is there been any contention between the church and the Undying Council previously? Like, specifically between the two?
Not between the two. I mean, unfortunately, the Church of Kaifon doesn't exactly have a positive public relations standpoint. Nobody looks upon the Church of Kaifon and thinks, man, that is a fantastic organization to be a part of. But they have done good things within the city, and that is very hard to dispute. I do believe that the Church of Kaifon has nothing to do with this. Again, it is very hard to convince the faithful to change their mind once they have decided this is the way things are.
Is the High Priest still? Or no, they weren't one of the ones that left.
High Priest Lennon has I believe I said that he left. I can't remember.
No, I think you said they were one of the ones that had stayed initially.
Oh yeah, but yes. So as the conversations were going on, they were one of them that left. I'm sorry. Because now the only ones left are Belvedere, Madani, Advaris, and the individuals from Canath. So they stuck around for a little while, but they aren't there now.
But they weren't one of the ones that left immediately.
Correct.
Was it Vivian and Freddie that Taldor mentioned would be able to help me?
Yes. They are members of what at the time was called the Festival Negotiation Committee. They were basically the individuals making sure that the festival was going to go off without a hitch. In the background of all of this, in the city, all of the new players, something that you have experienced in the past several days. We'll switch back over to this view so that we can take a look. The past 2 days has begun the Festival of Remembrance. Festival of Remembrance is basically a look back at a time where the entire city was threatened. City was threatened by an individual named Tyrus. This individual who basically lorded over the city, gave them the city itself and other cities throughout the realm a warning. 14 days until destruction. This Festival of Remembrance is a time to remember all of the events that transpired and is meant to be a celebration instead. As these events transpire, or as the festival goes on, there's a lot of celebration. Out in the streets, this would typically be a big ordeal. There are games and just music everywhere and tons of beer and just anything you could ever want. That's what would be going on in the city. But unfortunately, when this anomaly appeared in the sky, everything changed. The events that were going to take place originally have all but halted. Some things are still going on. Like, the beer vendors, not dumb. They're going to sit up and still sell beer out in the streets because people are panicking and they want to have alcohol to drink it all away. They're making a killing right now. Other things that were supposed to transpire, such as the magic acts and performers and the bards that were going to play throughout the streets, they're nowhere to be found. Most of them are hiding away, fearful of what is actually going on here within the city.
So It's a bit out of character that whole side quest line kind of fell.
Kind of the bard side quests. Yeah, I mean they were originally planned and they were going to go out and perform and originally. So the way that this was written for you guys is, had you taken care of certain things, certain milestones would happen and things would transpire in the city, but you would get to enjoy the festival. So you'd get to walk around and get to play some of the games and win you some magic items and have some fun and do some random, shenanigans. That went out the window when you guys decided, let's get on the airship and leave all of our troubles behind. And take a 5-day vacation while we're out there.
It wasn't a vacation, it was a long rest.
You say you say that, but literally 5 days of doing nothing but sitting around and relaxing. That sounds like a vacation.
It's a vacation.
And not just that, but on a mountainous island that's just beautiful, and there's, nothing but trees and mechanical birds. There were mechanical birds, I'll give you that.
I was going to say, a couple of the party members did almost die.
Yeah, there was a mechanical bird that tried to kill you, but that's fine.
That's normal. It's fine.
Yeah, totally fine. All right, so back to what we were talking about here. So yes, Leisha, you were given very specific information telling you to speak to the members of the council, as they would be able to provide you with any and all information that they would have had from their time dealing with the Emerald Claw and or the rumors of the Lich Queen.
I don't mean to interrupt, sir and ma'ams, but Haldor pointed me in your direction for more information on the Emerald Claw. I'm not sure I buy into the Lich Queen, but any threat deserves its due investigation.
I don't really have anything to add to this conversation of, plans and strategy, so I can tell you what we know.
I'm all ears.
I'm gonna walk away from Mariel, who gave me that scary look.
By this time, would I be back up front?
Yeah, and you guys can move your own characters, by the way.
Okay.
And if you need to know distances, if you click and hold and then use the letter Q, you can see a distance that it would take to move somewhere. So you obviously can move within 30 feet. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we have Vivian and Leisha stepping off to the side. Freddy still sticking with Taldor, Belvedere, Shannara, and Mariel. Desmond with the crow overhead, listening in closely. Which story or which path do you want to go down here? Because you'll have to focus on one conversation.
Freddy, I think.
Okay.
Because I've heard I have a general idea of what Vivian has been saying, so I'll stick with the people that are there.
Okay. All right. So then let's start with Freddy. Freddy bringing the rest of the group forward. Belvedere obviously greeting you warmly, getting to see you once again for the first time in quite a few days. His spirits are very much lifted from the last time that you saw him. He did not seem like he was doing quite so well whenever you were having discussions with him the first time. Now very spirited and has Taldor to thank for that, because Taldor has given him some fantastic news that they don't have to spend a dime on troops to be able to help take care of the city.
Indeed.
All right, so pulling all of them together, what information would you like to discuss with them?
Well, we already brought them up to speed on what transpired before, like the situation when we got the scrolls and things, and how things are kind of rather conspicuously falling in place, as there's the attempt on Amriel, and then the thing with the Church of Kaifan. So it brings up the fact that it's concerned that with how things are going to go in, that Belvedere himself will be the target. Will be the target of whatever happens next.
Okay, so kind of pulling out the scrolls, I'm guessing, and kind of sharing with him, so far, bad things have happened to these two. Yours is the only one that remains. Kind of just sharing that information with him. As you're taking this information, starting to filter it out to him, Belvedere has his look goes from a very, happy and, for lack of a better word, just joyous that the Flaming Fist is now a big thing again, that was once really big here within the city. It goes from that to a very somber look as he kind of looks over this, and he takes a look at this scroll, and this scroll details everything to a T of him overlooking some kind of paperwork sitting on a desk, and he's kind of leaning forward, looking over it, just one by one, flipping through papers and what looks like he's just trying to gather information. He knows the exact location within his tower that this would have been taken from, or where somebody would have seen him at. And his concern is legitimate. He looks at you and, how did you get this? Who brought you this?
I'll explain to him with details I can the situation when we were tracking down the one assassin and the encounters that we had.
Okay. So you tracked him down. He gave you these scrolls. And he said, don't track us. Don't follow us. Don't let anyone know where we are, or bad things will come. And you're telling me my name is on the list next?
As far as we can tell, this.
And he kind of takes the scroll, and you watch as his hand kind of just clutches around it, and you watch as the parchment just kind of crumbles into his hand, and he kind of looks at you and says, This should not have been a thing. If the assassin warned you, why did you pursue?
Because we really didn't think this through then. We did attempt to relay to the Evan Company, but
They
I don't know.
specifically told you, do not bring the Evan Company into this.
Well, as far as we know, they didn't do much of anything anyway. It was amidst another situation. As I told you, what we thought was the Warforged leader of this, whatever this protest is, was assassination in action and out of character. Who still had the? Someone still had the dragon shard that was used, don't they?
That would have been Calypso. If you would like to procure that, could send word out and have that item retrieved.
Yeah, do that.
So he kind of loosens his grip around this scroll and kind of unfurls it. So, the assassins will come for me next. We'll need to set up some kind of guard. Need to protect myself. I'm not going to be caught in the middle of this. We will need to address all that we can with the members of Madani. He kind of looks over to Taldor, and Taldor looks over and just as concerned as Belvedere is, and takes the scroll and looks at it, and again, just whoever took this had a very keen eye for detail. And Taldor kind of shakes his head and says, We'll protect the tower. We will make sure that there are men guarding and protecting you at all costs. I will even send members of the Basilisk Gaze to help to protect you. I think right now, the best thing that we can do is get you to safety. If the assassins are still out there and looking for you, it's only a matter of time before they strike.
I have a question.
Sure.
You said Shannara was beckoned up to that same group?
Yep,
Is she
over here.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I would say probably what I would have done then is probably gone and stood behind her.
Okay.
And because I thought she was still up here, but then I remembered you said that. Does she does she say or do anything while this conversation is going on?
So, based on your knowledge of her and who she is as a person, you know that she is very observant. She's one that listens. I mean, she's a spy. That's what she does. Yeah. She doesn't let on that she's paying attention to a specific thing or that something catches her interest. You could tell as she's listening to the conversation because she's turning her head and kind of acknowledging everybody as the conversations are going on. But nothing, she's not acting or reacting to anything. She's just kind of taking it all in right now.
Okay. All right.
As this continues to go on, you do, however, hear Shannara kind of turn and look in the direction of Freddy to say, you mentioned finding a warforged that you thought was behind all of this. What makes you change your mind that there isn't still some kind of uprising?
I haven't changed my mind, but especially and out of care, you said that they actually have started moving?
They've started moving, but they're doing so even without Sarge being there, yeah.
If they're still active, or they're moving without Sarge there, then it means someone else is behind this. And either Sarge was not the only one, or is just a scapegoat. I would assume.
Well, these are constructs. What are the chances you think they've become corrupted?
Well, even as constructs, they're still living things in their own right.
Sentient, yes, but from the information that we have been told, they've also been given something to help make them a little more powerful. Who's to say that House Canath isn't attempting to corrupt them from within? I mean, we have all heard of cursed magical items in the world. We've all encountered them. People getting cursed over random things, touching a doorknob, for instance. Wouldn't be too unheard of to think that the same thing could happen to these constructs.
Well, then, the best thing to do would be to investigate whatever it is that each of these constructs have been, and what exactly it does.
I would like to send Eratorum?
Eraturum.
Eraturum. I'm close. I'm getting closer.
You're close. You're getting closer.
Eraturum. Eraturum. Yeah? Eraturum?
Eraturum.
Eraturum. Yeah. I'd like to send him to join you. If you are going to investigate this and look a little deeper into the Warforged incident, I believe that my old friend here could assist you.
I'll extend my hand to Freddy and just, Eraturum, at your service.
I'll shake his hand.
And by the looks of things, I think the two of you will need as much help as you can get. So, hopefully, a warm welcome for him. Down to the south, Leisha and Vivian, two of you kind of step to the side. Obvious questions on the mind of Leisha. What would you guys like to discuss?
Well, first I'll introduce myself. Hello, I'm Vivian. What's your name?
Dido, are you there?
I'm Leisha Delphine. You can call me Dally if that's easier.
All right, Deli. So what were you wanting to know?
Well, do you have any information of the Emerald Claw? Is it more than just two people?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It is way more than just two people. Goodness, the assassin's part of the Emerald Claw, for one thing. And we chased them to this house, and there were, like, tons of them. There was a basement, but we didn't go down there because we were hurt pretty bad.
Have you heard about the Lich Queen?
Yeah, that's who the Emerald Claw worships. What's, Forge, what's the name of the Lich Queen? I can't remember.
You have very, very basic knowledge of the Lich Queen. One sec. The information that you gathered from Kai was this was Arondis. Arondis Vol, the deity of the Blood of Vol faith. But you don't know how true that is. It's been rumored that she has been dead for centuries.
But Kai told us that she was actually alive and wants to come back.
Yeah, if you can believe Kai.
I'll tell Lisa?
Leisha.
Just
Leisha. I'll tell Leisha the name, which I can't remember already, And I'll tell her that my deity told us that she's actually still alive and wants to come back.
Other than words from above, do you have any other indication that she's on her way back?
Well, we're pretty sure that this item on that island we were at was going to be used to help her come back because the Emerald Claw were all about it.
Oh, this is a bigger threat than I had originally thought.
Yeah, I know, and no one seems to care. It's so crazy.
To be fair, you guys have only seen 2 members wearing their garb, so it's not like, oh my god, an army's, made their way upon the city.
Well, Vivian is very trusting.
Also true.
And isn't a
Also
great
true.
source of information either.
Also true.
Don't ask Vivian for info. Got it.
Well, I've been tasked with this to the end, so now you have someone who is interested.
That's cool. You should talk to the others about what next step you should take, because I am not sure, and I really have to go to the bathroom, so I'm just gonna duck out real quick.
Was
Very
that
well.
said in character or out of character?
No, that was in character.
That was
Vivian's
in
trying to
character.
leave.
Yep. So that flowed too flawlessly to be out of character.
Then, by all means, you're excused.
I shall.
And I will go back to Freddy.
I'm gonna leave and go to the Hall of Remembrance.
Are you trying to do so without being seen?
I told her I was going to the bathroom, so I'm gonna just leave the room, but then I'm gonna sneak out of the rest of the building.
Okay. Trying to think of how this is going to play out.
We can wait till everyone else is done talking.
Vivian, as you make your way out of the doors, you remember what it was like when you got here originally. Outside of the chambers, the chamber itself was barred shut to get into the Hall of the 22. To get in, you had to you're banging on the door waiting for somebody to try to let you in because they were trying to keep all of the regular people out and keep them from getting inside. Are you attempting to go back out the same way you came? Or are you gonna go to the second floor, try to hop out a window and shimmy down the rain guards or whatever and make your way down the brick and try to escape?
No, I'm just gonna walk out.
Try to walk out the front door? Okay. All right. I'll keep that in mind. Okay. So the group comes back together. Vivian quietly rushing out the door and trying to just get out of here as quickly as she can. The rest of you regroup. Alicia having a bit more information about the Emerald Claw. What would you guys like to discuss? Because now it's kind of an open floor. You've discussed most of the finer points of what you want to do. Now it's how do you proceed?
I'm gonna come out of the Raven, And I will turn to Aaron, who I assume is still right next to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I will just tell him everything that I have heard that they said specifically about our house. So all the stuff about how they think that we have something to do with cursing the Warforged, and we have something to do with them revolting, and I'll tell him all of that.
Okay.
But quietly.
Okay. As you are mentioning this to him, he listens closely and attempts to kind of understand what's going on and why they would like to believe this. He gets incredibly frustrated, which is something you don't see Aaron Decana do very often. And he immediately begins to step out of the dais and make his way towards the group.
I'll get up and follow him. I'll be close behind him.
Okay. As he approaches the group, obviously attention is drawn to him almost immediately. He turns and looks to everybody, and specifically almost kind of like staring down Representative Avaris a bit. And as he steps forward, kind of making his way about over here, he looks onto the group and says, I couldn't help but to overhear that you believe we have something to do with all of this. As he says this, room kind of falls quiet. Mariel turns and looks in his direction and says, well, from what we understand, you have provided something to influence the Warforged. Perhaps you can enlighten us a bit more about what that is. And he kind of stops and adjusts his robe, and then you watch as he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out this little round orb, probably about the size or the dimensions of like a silver dollar. And he pulls it out of his pocket and holds it in front of him, and it kind of hovers in his hand. And as he holds it, he kind of holds it out in front of you, and he says, this is a docent. These are very, very difficult to come by. In fact, we are the first ones that have been able to develop them in the past 4,000 years. Now, I can assure you, if we're going to spend this much time attempting to gather information and create these, we're not going to corrupt our own achievements in magical prowess.
Honestly, I have little doubt that you yourself want to compromise your business. But who isn't? Can you confidently say that those below you that would actually handle such things wouldn't?
He looks at you and takes the docent and extends it out in your direction to hand it to you for you to examine up close. He hands it to you and says, based on the information that we have gathered from the creation patterns and the schema, we were able to come to an understanding of how docents work. This specific docent, we spent a year developing. We sent it off to individuals within Eberron, our quality control, as it were, and had them to test it out. And Warforged walked around with these every day and performed tasks beyond belief of any human, elf, or humanoid across Eberron. They gained superhuman strength. They gained the ability to move faster than we had ever saw before. They could do their jobs more efficient than anyone has ever experienced. This is the product of our hard work. And this is exactly what the Warforged have been given.
This is the prototype.
No, this is the production.
So how many of these have been distributed? How many have been made?
We have distributed 4,000 of them across Eberron and an additional 2,000 here within Kalido.
And how long have these been in use?
They have been used in Eberron since their creation, so just over a year. It's only been a few months since we have put these into full production here within Eberron, or within Kalido.
So the ones that it's safe to assume that the ones that are being in use here are a different production than the ones used back in Eberron.
No, we used the same exact production facility in Eberron to create all of them.
I mean, they were made at different times.
No. Again, they were all made from the same facility. Everything is the same. There was nothing done differently. There was nothing made differently about them. They were built in a batch after we had learned the creation process. And with a little bit of help from House Kalina, we were able to finally get all of this developed.
House Kalina.
House Kalina.
I'm going to extend my hand out and more asking towards Aaron than Freddy and just say, may I?
Of course, it won't do you any magical properties, but you are more than welcome to examine it.
Alright. You said it kind of just floats a little bit? And
Yeah,
may
like,
not really have any weight to it?
Like, it feels like when you reach out to grab it, it feels like an orb, like, twice the size. Because, like, your hand grasps onto, like, this magical force field around it. And then you're able to actually hold it, and it just kind of hovers in your hand.
Okay. I'm going to look towards Aaron again and just be like, it's clear these are very powerful. Have you put forth any safeguards to prevent such power from getting into the improper hands, so to speak?
Well, to be honest with you, Dawsons aren't something that you just stumble upon. These are things that previously were ancient relics made by the giants back in our home in Eberron. But, because we have learned the creation process of this, we were able to make them ourselves. These are no different than any magical item that you have ever held in your hand. From a sword, to armor, to a potion to help you save yourself. These are just the same. They have the same magical properties. They don't have an on and off switch, as it were.
Well, no, of course not. But I mean, like, you've obviously said that you have made several of them. But what have you done to ensure that they don't fall or come into possession of evil?
These were specifically inserted and delivered to each one of the Warforged that ever came into possession of them by individuals of our house. Should they reach one of the Warforged here within the realm, as they have for any of the Warforged that have received our property, House Lorandar specifically were the ones that requested these for their Warforged. When they request them, they send them to us and to our workshops, to where we will install them and make sure that everything is working properly. And they have done so for several months here, and over a year now within Eberron.
Are the same people that handled the installation at Eberron the same people that handled it here?
They are. The reason that we had to separate them is because handling 4,000 Warforged in one location is quite the feat. So, obviously couldn't install them all at one time.
Perhaps we could speak to the individuals that were responsible for installation of these.
Well, you very well could. I could send members of the Fabricators Guild over to speak to you if that is what you would like, but I can assure you, this has lived up to all of the standards that we would ever want out of our specific house, and we are quite known for our magical prowess, after all.
Of course. Have there been any issues with the Warforged in Eberron?
Not a single one.
So it's just the Warforged here in Toledo then.
He nods.
I'm gonna look at him, and I'm gonna be very, very blunt about this, and just look at him and say, is there anyone within your faction that has demonstrated, how shall we say, distaste for the other factions within Toledo?
My friend, I can assure you there's no such thing here. Our house was on the verge of collapse. This city has given us more than we could have ever hoped for. We have prospered more here within one city than we could over several nations within Eberron. Why would we want to jeopardize that?
You might not, but there might be others that seek to take the power of this city for themselves.
Do I believe him?
That's what I was going to ask if I do as well.
You can both insight check that if you would like to. Looking him over and kind of watching his reactions, he seems very truthful to you. He lets on no tell that he is skewing the truth whatsoever. Nothing. It seems dead certain that what he is saying is what he is meaning.
Okay.
He looks at you, both of you, and says, "Let me put this into perspective for you. We were members of the original 12 dragon-marked houses in Eberron. We worked with everybody. House Oren, House Larandar, House Madani. We have done everything that we can for every house here, because we know how to manipulate magic to do the things that we want it to do. Did you see what was on the hips of those men standing behind Taldor de Madani?"
Did I see what was hanging on their hips?
They had this thing that looked like a really odd-looking, very long pistol.
Okay. The firearms, basically.
The firearms, yep.
Okay.
Right, we saw those in action when I
Yes,
went
you did.
to the Sunset No North.
Uh-huh. And
I've seen them in action, and I'll tell them.
He looks at you and says, "And I assume that all of you here have used the lightning rail at some point here within the city?"
Of course.
"What about the gateway that brings you from Eberron to here? I'm sure one of you have probably traveled through that at one time." You can thank us for all of those things. And we did so with the help of every house of this city. Not a single time did we request that we were the focal point of any of it.
Alright, if you obviously are very confident in your own, what about any of those around it, the other houses, or anyone else that would be involved? Specified the other house, and what, I forget out of character, what house was that he said that helped out?
For which part?
He said that they had outsourced part of the
Colonna.
creation and shit.
Yeah,
Colonna.
so they had gathered information on manufacturing processes from House Kalana.
And no, out of character too, no one here is part of House Kalana?
Yes, the individual that runs the Dark. The
Oh yeah,
underground city.
Kosef.
Yeah, Kosef Kalana.
Well, I actually, right when Freddy realizes that, he just kind of... What was... Hold on, I gotta look at the... Because the whole quest... Because House Kalana was the one that sent us to the Gnomer City, correct?
No,
Or no, Kraybot.
that was Kraybot. That was the Drow. Kalana is a new name for you.
I ask him what else you can tell me about Kalana.
He kind of looks at you, and as he begins to speak, Mariel speaks up and says, "If you require information about House Kalana, I can provide you anything you would like to know. They have a good reputation here within the city."
I'm gonna go ahead and hand the Dosset back to Aaron.
Okay. Yeah,
And then I'm gonna lean over. I'm gonna look towards Shannara and just look at her and say, about our conversation earlier, can we discuss that a little bit more in length, if you wouldn't mind?
And she kind of nods in your direction.
All right.
Desmond, you're in the back, hanging out, listening to all of this.
I'd be near enough to it. Just like a little ways away from
Yeah,
Aaron.
you'd be kind of like over here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just wait for him to give me a signal as to what to do, but I'll be taking all of this in.
Okay. As he begins to turn away, Aaron turning and getting ready to start walking away, he kind of stops in his tracks and looks back at Freddy. And as he does, he says, "How about this? We can prove to you our worth to this city. I'll have Desmond here accompany you. He's very familiar with the things that we have done here. Family upon the guild, and knows what we do as a people for this city. Perhaps Desmond can help you to understand a little bit more of our place."
I would appreciate that.
What do you say, Desmond? Are you accepting of this?
Well, I mean, sure, I guess.
It beats sitting around and just reading books all day, doesn't it?
I like books.
I understand that you like books, and books are a very good thing for your learning. But this is real-world experience. You can't pass up on something like that.
I understand what you're saying. Fine.
Out of
Hi.
how does one refer to like the heads of like the houses, like lord or count?
So if they are, so it depends on what role they play. He's just considered a representative here, so you would refer to him as representative because that's the highest rank he could get in the city. But the quick way to understand, like with the dragon marks, as I've typed out in on the left there, the last names of a dragon marked individual has the D at the beginning. And that just indicates that they are dragon marked themselves. There can be people with the last name of Madani and not have the dragon mark at all, and they wouldn't get that initial at the beginning. So outside of those two things, it's very important to remember the D for the dragon mark because that's very important to them. And then of course their rank within the city would be, whatever it is. So if they were a magistrate of a ward, they would just be a magistrate. For him, he's a representative. He's a member of the 22. That's the highest rank he'll receive here.
Oh, Representative Kenneth.
Yes.
And he's turning to leave.
What's that?
And he is leaving.
He had just turned around and was getting ready to leave, but then mentioned about Desmond joining you. Yes.
Well, Freddie will speak directly to him. He said, if you forgive me, Representative Kenneth, I have no doubt of the contributions that you and your house have made to Toledo. And I might say that from what I've seen, I can both appreciate and respect what's done, but please don't take any of this too personally. I believe that we both have similar ideals at heart as far as trying to get to the bottom of this issue and resolve it as best as possible.
My dear boy, when you get to be my age, you don't become disgruntled by little words of individuals. Trust me, there's no harm with any of what you have said. We will prove to you who we are in due time. I can assure you. And with that, he kind of turns and starts to walk away, kind of places his left hand upon the left shoulder of Desmond as he walks by and makes his way back to the others.
As he walks away, I'm just gonna quickly say, don't forget what I told you.
Thank you guys for the host. Very much appreciate you. Welcome everybody. We're close to wrapping up here before long. Gonna just finish up here and catch up with them. One sec. Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. Stuff going on in stream.
No, you're good. Just look at him as he turns away. Just quickly say, "Don't forget what I told you," and then leave it at that.
Very well. I won't. Don't worry. And don't worry, I will be in touch.
Just nod.
And continues to walk away. Thanks, Cheryl. Appreciate all of you. Appreciate everybody being here. Thank you for hanging out with us. Very much appreciate you. All right, so as Aaron Kenneth walks away, leaves the rest of you here, kind of now kicking around the idea of the exact path that you're going to go down. We go to Vivian. Vivian, you make your way down the stairs, proceeding to the second level, then slowly making your way down and around the stairs towards the first level. How are you wanting to proceed?
Are there people around me?
At the doorway, as you look forward, the giant double doors that you are allowed to take to get into here, there are 2 guards standing at the doorway. Pretty big, burly-looking individuals. The doors are still barred, though the voices are starting to slowly dwindle away. What was originally a mob of people surrounding the building is now just a handful of individuals just clamoring around the door attempting to get in.
Can I not leave out these doors? Where was everyone else leaving?
Oh, they were leaving out those doors.
Then I'm just gonna leave out those doors.
They also had guards escorting them out those doors.
I'm going to leave out these doors.
Okay. As you walk up to the door, 2 very large individuals standing at the doorway look over at you, just staring. Look down because you're a little bit shorter than what they are. They kind of glance down at you. What, you're going out there?
Well, I need to go to the bathroom. It's kind of an emergency.
Bathroom's on 2nd floor.
Okay, and then I'll go to the 2nd floor.
So you turn around, make your way to the 2nd floor. There are restrooms within the chambers here. This 2nd floor, if you recall back to the session where you met with Representative Kraybot, this is the same floor that all of their offices are on. So all of the 22 have their own small separate offices here. You make your way back up the stairs to the 2nd floor, and you start looking around. Pretty quickly, you find the restroom, which is not far from the staircase.
I'm going to go into the restroom,
Okay.
and I'm going to cast invisibility on myself.
Okay. So you cast invisibility upon yourself, and then what?
I'm going to climb out of a window.
Okay. Give me a perception check. Let's see which kind of door you can find, or window you can find. All right. You start looking around. You look down at the end of the hall. You see a doorway open. Doorway seems to lead into a large-ish kind of chamber. You remember from when you were visiting Representative Kraybot that much like the giant window in the upper thing here, there are windows that overlook the open plaza on the ground there, where some of the representatives gather and have discussions and stuff like that. You start walking forward, and you make your way down the hallway with your invisibility, and you find a couple of the representatives hanging out around the corner. Thankfully, your stealth would be high enough with your invisibility that you're able to creep right by without being noticed. You step into the chamber, make your way over to the window, reach for the latch, click, swing the window open, and as the window swings open, you hear, "What? Who's that? Who's in my office?" And you stop and turn around, and directly in the back corner of the room is one of the representatives holding a book in his hand that you just didn't see as you were so focused on the doorway, or the window that was in this chamber.
I'm gonna just climb out the window because he can't see me.
Okay, give me a dexterity check to make sure you can make it down without any incident. Okay. Start to climb down. Your fingers start to slip. Thankfully, it's only one story up, so as your fingers slip, you kind of stumble and kind of clatter across the ground, quickly standing yourself back up, brushing yourself off. Nobody saw that because you were invisible. Make your way out of the plaza and make your way back out into the public. Several openings here that allow you to just kind of exit out. You make your way back out into Upper Toledo. Let's go here. So you are up here. You have successfully made yourself out to this point. Let me drop a token here for you. Right here. Made your way out of the plaza over here, and then immediately turned to the north and headed through the archways that kind of surround this area, making your way out into the very large open grassy area before hitting the road and reaching over towards building number 6, which is the Hall of Remembrance.
While I'm walking, I'm going to try and think to Kai and be like, what do you think of the meeting?
At first, you don't get a response. Kind of dismiss it for a second and continue on, and you try again. Kai, are you? After a second, yes, Vivian, yes, I'm here. What is it?
Did you see the meeting? I was wondering what your opinion was. Also, I'm going to get your pyramid.
You're going to do that alone?
I don't think Freddy would be cool with you being my new patron.
I mean, it's also breaking and entering, and you're stealing from a museum, so I do hope that your ability to pick a lock is really well.
We'll find out.
Brief pause. All right, so the meeting, yes, the meeting was fine. It went accordingly. You lied, of course. Didn't tell anybody I was your patron. Not that I'm offended or anything.
I figured, well, with it being the festival of your defeat, people wouldn't be happy to hear that you're celebrating.
I'm sure my sister would have appreciated it.
Oh, I can tell her if you'd like.
Depends on how long you wish to stay in the city, I suppose.
What do you mean I'll get kicked out?
What do you think? Do you think they'll be very accepting of the fact that you are now one of my followers?
You're probably right. But everyone was pretty cool with me worshipping Mephistopheles.
Because Mephistopheles hasn't attempted to destroy the entire city, or the realm, or kill everybody that they cared about.
But they care about me. They care about me, and you're helping me not be tortured for all eternity, so I feel like they should me.
You think the two balance out then? Well, I guess you chose the right patron for that. All right, proceed.
Will do.
And you can't stop me.
So, you make your way out into the street, making your way over towards the Hall of Remembrance. Still tons of people hanging out there. Obviously, this is a very important place, especially right now with the festival going on. There are a lot of people hanging out here.
I'm gonna go on in.
Okay. You walk in. Nobody says anything or questions it because obviously you guys are here to...
I'm still invisible.
Here to Also true. You are invisible. I forgot about that. So you walk in.
How long does invisibility last?
An hour.
It lasts
An hour.
Yeah, it lasts an
Oh, jeez.
hour. Yeah. You slowly make your way into the Hall of Remembrance. Let me pull up this. 1 second. As you make your way back inside, once again, you step into the massive double doors, and at the center of the chamber, you see the very large stone bas-relief mural that extends from the floor up to the ceiling. Tons of people standing around everywhere, admiring all of the paintings and pictures and all of the artifacts that have been gathered. You step in, you do still see Curator Ceratus walking around greeting people. Very friendly individual, wonderful person. You really liked him whenever you spoke to him. You start to make your way up the stairs, knowing exactly where this pyramid was and where you last encountered it. As you make your way to the second floor, off to the far end of the chamber, all the way over towards here, it is here that you stand directly in front of the exhibition called Preserving History. Stand around and you see all of the relics that ever mattered, and there are quite a few people still standing in here. You see the original peace treaty, the dagger of Krod, the pyramid relic, Eleanor's book, Tyrus's staff, the medallions, Vormash's spellbook, and of course, the shards of Twilight. They're all in separate cases, and specifically, each of them outlining and kind of notifying everybody of who it was that donated each one of these pieces. You find the pyramid relic, the one that was donated by Dorn's by Dorn's son, and you walk up to it. There are a handful of people around, especially in this area. They're looking at all of the other artifacts, but this one by itself, nobody is currently standing at.
I'm gonna just check out the security of the pyramid for right now.
Okay. Give me an investigation check. From what you can see, each of the artifacts are covered by 1.5 inch thick glass, setting on very ornate looking black onyx pedestals for each one of these. From what you know of the realm, there are very few ways to get inside of these without having some kind of magical alarm. As you experienced when you were on the SLR, even the smallest things, such as locking off a train car or locking the doors of a train car, can have disastrous effects. You don't see any of that here.
So all I have to do is break the glass and take it, pretty much.
Sure.
Let's go with that. I honestly like where Vivian says that personally, as a character.
What's that?
I like where Vivian said is at.
So it's funny, and when the session ends tonight, I will talk to you guys in depth about where I thought this was gonna go and how it didn't go that way.
I am going to hide somewhere where no one can see me. And I'm going to drop invisibility.
Okay.
Then I'm going to go and find the curator. And I'm going to ask him to come look at the pyramid with me and tell me more about it.
Okay. So you go back downstairs. You grab the curator 1 second because my handout closed. Where did my handout go? Hell? Go back downstairs. You find curator Certus. Bring him upstairs and say, I have questions about this. What is this? And he looks at you and says, well, this is the pyramid relic, once discovered by Lady Gladomain and given to Dorn Silro. She investigated it for quite some time and determined there was a magical pattern upon it. You pressed the right buttons and it would reveal a message, and this message eventually led them to a different realm of existence where our friends, our heroes, saved the day and defeated Kai Gladomain.
Interesting.
No,
You
but that
know-
wasn't all. Hold on. That wasn't all. You see, this was also a Mabaran resonator, which means whenever it activates, death is permanent.
That is also very interesting.
It is indeed. This is probably one of my favorite relics here.
Do you ever get to hold them?
Give me a deception check.
Oof.
Oof. He looks at you and says, they're behind 1.5 inch glass. No.
Well, I meant when they first got donated, did you get to hold them?
Well, of course I did. I was the one that put them in their cages here.
Oh, that's cool. You know, my mom didn't tell me about any of this stuff, so it's super interesting to look at all this stuff.
Well, some of these, such as the shards here, when we originally collected them, there was a bit of concern that they wouldn't survive transport to be able to be brought here. Thankfully, all of our relics were able to make it without any harm.
What do you mean harm? Are they like just super breakable?
No, we were afraid that somebody would come and try to steal them and destroy them.
Oh.
You know,
Well, I mean,
originally, when all of these items were brought to us, the name Kai Gladomain didn't sit well with most people. It took us a very long time before we were able to actually set up this hall.
because people didn't want to remember?
Can you blame them?
Not at all. Not at all. It's painful to look back at things that hurt you,
Indeed it is.
but it's also painful to find out people were lying to you and you didn't know about stuff.
I'm not quite sure I understand.
I just mean, my mom had this whole life and she never told me about it. She was always telling me how you gotta stay home and stay safe. And the outside world is super scary. And everyone's trying to kill you and trick you. And I find that not to be true.
Well, we are kind people here.
True. That is very true. Well, I'm super glad that all this stuff is here to learn about for everybody.
As am I. Is there anything I can help you with for the rest of the evening here, Miss Vivian?
What are your hours? Like, if I wanted to come back another day, what times are you open and closed? So I don't come in and then it's like, hey, we're closing. I don't want to, be annoying.
Well, if you are ever curious about the hours, we do have a brochure downstairs that you could take with you. It does have all of our normal operating hours there. Be sure to pick one up on your way out.
Will do. Thank you so much, sir. And I will sweetly pat him on the shoulder.
And he awkwardly kind of smiles and then watches as you make your way past him down the stairs, back up to the front desk, and yank one of the flyers to get the regular business hours, and thinks to himself, what a strange young woman. And with that, we're going to end tonight's session.
Okay.
I'm both sad and glad that I was really expecting you to like break the glass or try.
I almost thought she was going to be like, no, fuck it. Just hit it. Just break the glass. I'm taking it.
Just break it.
I'll
It's mine now. It's mine now, bitch.
This is a multi-step plan. I gotta case the joint first.
See, now you're getting it, because my whole fear was you were actually going to break the glass, and I was going to be like, son of a bitch, she's going to jail again. We're going to have to deal with that whole story again. But thankfully, you did not break the glass, and you did not get thrown in jail, so bonus points. Yet.
Yep.
She's got an intelligence 14. She wouldn't do that.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end stream. Go ahead and say bye to stream.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
stream.